It is truly my honor to introduce the incomparable Dave Barry. Dave needs no introduction, obviously, but he's the author of several bestsellers, including Swamp Story, Lessons from Lucy, Dave Barry's Complete Guide to Guys, Dave Barry Turns 40, and Dave Barry is not making this up. A wildly popular syndicated columnist, he won the 1988 Pulitzer Prize for Commentary when I was 10 years old. How's that for commentary? Dave will be presenting his new book, which is actually an autobiography titled Class Clown, The Memoirs of a Professional Wiseass, How I Went 77 Years Without Growing Up. And it tells the highly entertaining story of how Dave went from being a hippie in a college rock band to a conscientious objector to an eager young newspaper reporter to the renowned humor writer we all know and love. And it's complete with footnotes. I want to thank Dave for bringing the Miami weather to Gaithersburg today. But after learning from this book that Dave Barry's two biggest fears growing up were having to get the polio vaccine, mind you, not polio, but having to get the polio vaccine and nuclear war, I debated whether to tell him that the research for the vaccine actually happened here in Gaithersburg, and that during the Cold War, we were also home to missile silos just down the road. So Dave, I hope you don't get PTSD while you're here, but as a proud resident of a city famous for its snow plowing, I was perhaps most disturbed to learn from this book that when it snowed in Dave's hometown in upstate New York, his dad and their neighbors had to plow the street themselves. So you've got it pretty good here, Gaithersburg. To recount these and many other great personal stories, Dave will be joined in conversation with John Williams, who oversees book coverage for the Washington Post and was previously on the books desk of the New York Times. So without further ado, the guitarist for the Rock Bottom Remainders, ladies and gentlemen, Dave Barry.
Thanks for being here, sir.
Thank you. My pleasure. Thank you all for coming.
I have many times in my life where I talk to my 14-year-old self, and he's kind of flipping out right now. I've been reading and loving Dave Barry's work for a long time. I'm gonna do things a little bit reverse order. I'm gonna get to the start of the memoir toward the end, actually, for various reasons. But let's start with just the question of why a memoir now. I mean, you've written so many books and so many novels and other things. What inspired it?
Well, I figured I wasn't dead yet, so get it in before that happens. Yeah. So that I could do it rather than you or somebody. But no, I was like, my editor, my agent said this is a good idea. People are writing memoirs, should write a memoir. The thing that had me concerned, it still has me concerned, is the level of fame. The big memoir when I was writing this was Barbra Streisand. And she wrote this 970-page memoir. It's just full of famous people. Like at one point, she says in there, she was on the phone with Warren Beatty. She said, "I hung up, and I thought, did I sleep with Warren?" Hard to remember. I think maybe once. Like I know for a fact that I have never slept with Warren Beatty. Whatever you may hear from him. So like I just worry about it is at that level of. So I still am I'm moderately well known. So like I'll be at an airport and I'll be recognized. This happens regularly to me. Somebody will come up and say, excuse me. And I go, no, it's fine. And they'll say, I love you. I really love I love your books. And I'm being very modest because I'm a modest person. And they go, and then they'll go like, I love my kids loved Hoot. And I'll go, well, that was Carl Hiaasen, who's a great writer and a great friend of mine, but it's not technically not me, And they go, oh no, I love you too, whoever you actually are, So that's the level of fame I'm at, So I'm a little nervous about writing a memoir, but it's too late to stop now, it's out. So
Friend of Carl's is a friend of mine.
Yeah.
And you start out. Let's talk about your career, because that's obviously a big part of it. Once you get past your childhood, you started pretty young in the writing business.
Yeah.
And how did you? We're going to get to the Pulitzer Prize eventually. So get us to the humble beginnings. Where did you start? What was the first funny thing you wrote, and for who?
Well, I wrote, when I was in high school, I wrote one humor column for my high school newspaper, because there was only one edition of my high school newspaper. Because the editor was a friend of mine who was only the editor so he could get into Yale. And as soon as Yale accepted him, he was no longer interested in putting out the newspaper. But I did write a humor column for that. And that I enjoyed that. And then in college, I went to Haverford College. And I'm going to ask this man with a Swarthmore shirt to please leave. Because these are our rivals. I was at Haverford for 4 years. 4 years, we won 2 football games, both against Swarthmore. Because there was two Quaker schools. They're not really good at violent sports. But we beat Swarthmore. No, you can stay, but just for now. When I went to Haverford, I wrote columns, humor columns for the college newspaper, which I thought were funny, and my friends thought were funny. And then, 25 years later, we're at the 25-year reunion, and by now I'm a known columnist. And there was a kind of like a mixer in the gym, Haverford gym, and somebody had gotten all my columns, or a bunch of my columns from the Haverford paper, and blown them up and put them on the wall. So all around the walls, all these columns that I wrote in the 60s, and I'm reading them, and I don't get any of the jokes. And I conclude it's because we were not stoned when 25 years later. That's where But then I went, when I got out of college, I went to work at a little newspaper in Pennsylvania called the Daily Local News, Westchester. Yes, there we go. Our one subscriber over there. And I was a regular reporter there. I covered obituaries and stuff, fires, and I covered these incredibly dull municipal meetings, some of which are still going on, and wrote these long, boring stories. But they let you write a humor column if you wanted to, or a column. And my maiden was a humor column. So that really was the beginning of the humor writing. Was not my job, but on the side writing humor columns for the Daily Local News.
And you're maybe 23 or so.
Yeah, it was early 20s.
There were a handful of things in this book that really surprised me. One of which was that in the 1960s you were an intern at Congressional Quarterly.
Yes, right, correct.
Which humor is not the first thing that comes to mind when I think of CQ.
Yeah.
But what? And then you said you were a regular reporter at the paper in Pennsylvania. How much? How close were you to getting on a path where you weren't a humorist? You were a gumshoe kind of guy.
I was dangerously close to dealing in facts to continue for the rest of my life. But what happened was I went from the Daily Local News to the Associated Press, and I really hated the Associated Press because there's no room for humor columns there. There's no room for semicolons there. They're really just strict about writing there, and so I wouldn't write any humor at all. And then I was just unhappy, and I through a friend's dad, I got hired to teach effective writing seminars, believe it or not, and to business people. So for 7 years, I was traveling around the country, going to plants and office buildings all over the country, and I would get in a room full of 32 accountants or engineers or chemists, people who were not writers but had to write a lot and I would try to get them to write concise business reports, which is completely hopeless, but they paid me to try, so I tried. But during that time, I was writing a humor column on the side for $23.50 a week for the Daily Local News, which is the place I started. I can't really remember what question I'm answering here.
No, I'll remind you.
Okay.
So you were writing a column for $23 a pop for the Pennsylvania
for the Daily Local News, the same place.
Wow,
I started as a freelancer because I liked writing columns.
Yeah.
But I did not think of it as my job or my future. I thought I'm going to be teaching effective writing, which is even worse. That's what I thought I was going to be doing for the rest of my life, until I got the big break, which was my son was born, and at the time, this is 1980, the baby boomers had discovered childbirth, which when we how we are, the baby boomers, when we discover something, we're the first ones, and we had childbirth classes, which we don't know how people were having kids before us, but we had classes, and so we went to these classes, and they don't ever use the word pain, never. they talk about contractions and like how you're going to deal with the contractions, and you're going to breathe. The woman has to breathe a certain way, and they'll deal with the contractions. And it sounds really scientific and great, and you don't have to have drugs or anything. And then came the actual moment, and it's like in the, it's all everybody, just women screaming in pain and begging for drugs, so I wrote an essay about that, like, wow, this is, making fun of natural childbirth. And it just was the perfect time because all over the country, people my age were having babies and also achieving positions of prominence in newspapers. And so a whole bunch of papers reprinted that piece, and suddenly I got a call that I wrote the original piece for the Philadelphia Inquirer, and they paid me $350, which is the most I'd ever been paid for writing anything. That's pretty cool. And then I got a phone call the day after it ran from an editor at the Chicago Tribune. He's called me at home and said, "I loved your piece about natural childbirth. I want to run it in the Tribune. How much do you charge?" And I'm thinking, well, I already made $350, so everything after this is gravy. So I said, well, how about $50? And he goes, "We'll pay you $500. So like, if I had opened with 25, he might have come back with 1,000. We'll never know. But that was like, from that moment on, it's kind of shifted. And within a year or two, I'm not sure exactly how long, that I was, suddenly being courted and employed by the Miami Herald. And
that was probably not a great education and negotiation for you.
No.
Most times when you ask for 50, you don't get the 500 counter offer.
Like when I buy a car, it's like, I would like this car, and I'll pay whatever it costs. That's how,
I'm the same way.
That's me.
I just don't want to be bothered.
I just want the salesperson to be happy. I'm the world's shittiest negotiator.
So you write, obviously, famously for the Miami paper, and then there's a moment where I think it's after you've been writing for Miami for a bit, where there's a fork in the road, and you're choosing between Miami and Philadelphia. Is that right?
No, it was actually
that was the beginning.
The beginning was that the Herald and everybody assumed I would go to work for the Philadelphia Inquirer because I lived in suburban Philadelphia. The Inquirer was the prestige paper, right? It was a hot paper right then, and they were winning Pulitzers all over the place. So everybody assumed I would take the job there, and I lived there. It was, but I met this guy Gene Weingarten.
The locals know Gene.
Down at the Miami Herald, and like the Inquirer wanted me to kind of be like a conventional 3 days a week local humor columnist, and the Herald was like, you just write whatever you want, and we'll, one a week is all we ask. And I said, that's great, but I don't want to move to Miami because Miami was insane. And they said, okay, you don't have to. So for the next 3 years, I was the Miami Herald's humor columnist living in Glen Mills, Pennsylvania. But then ultimately, I decided that Miami was really pretty funny.
Yeah.
So I moved there.
After just 3 years?
Yeah.
So that's a big move because Miami does seem like one of those places where you kind of have to be there. Suburban Pennsylvania is not a substitute. So how did that turbocharge things once you moved to Miami? In terms of
I mean, we did a lot of it was like the golden age. The newspaper had more money than they knew what to do with, and they would just like, I could do whatever I wanted. So we would, they sent me out like on attack missions. I was an assault humorist, like when the Orlando Magic Orlando got its professional basketball team, the Orlando Magic, and Miami had just gotten its professional basketball team, the Miami Heat. And we decided we'd start a rivalry between us and Orlando because both teams were going to suck for a long time. The only team we could beat. It'd be like Swarthmore and Haverford. And so they sent me up to, and I just wrote this vicious assault on Orlando. It began like, it's time we resolved this simmering feud, which there was no feud at all. I was the simmering feud between Orlando and Miami. It's not really, we have to accept that this is true of both the good people of Miami and the low forehead nose picking yahoos, or like that. And it was just, and we ended up rented a bus and we went up. A bunch of people went up and to a basketball game up there.
And they played along. They surrounded you guys in yellow tape in your seats.
They cordoned our seats with crime scene tape, and they sprinkled baking soda all over the place to simulate cocaine, like stupidly thinking we had not brought our own.
Right.
No, we did not. That's just a joke. And I want the
The
young
paper
people
had
out
more money
there-
than it knew what to do with.
Right.
So.
So, but yeah, it was like that. And then ultimately, that's kind of how I won a Pulitzer Prize. They did the same thing to New York. The New York Times in 1986 did the most New York Times-y thing. Now, this man used to work at the Times, so he backed me up on this. They sent a team of
Yes.
Times people down to Miami. This is 1986. And they did a lot of research. And you know what they found out? They found out there were drugs and crime in Miami. And whoa, that came as a shock to us those of us who live there with bullet holes in our cars. And so anyway, they wrote this big, like basically 5 years too late trend piece about Miami, which we thought was pretty funny. So we thought, well, like the New York Times has been so kind as to come down here and see if we have any problems. Why don't we go up to New York and see if they have any problem? And so it was just me and at the Times and a whole lot of people down. The Herald just sent me and a photographer named Chuck to New York for 3 days, and we again just viciously attacked New York City. And
That trip must have been fun.
Well, it was so much fun. I mean, it was kind of the height of not great New York.
Yeah. It's a generous way of putting it.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, I think they could compete on all kinds of levels back then.
Yeah.
The highs and lows.
Yeah.
You say in the book that what I love about this, especially because the title is Class Clown, you talk about how a class clown needs an audience, and that's your readers. So I put a good image in my head of the kids in the class surrounding the person, and how much you love both, obviously, your beloved, as the size of this crowd attests. I don't think these are the people who hate you, but there are people who hate you. And one of the you say that humor. Misunderstanding humor is actually a great source of humor. One reader wrote to you, "For your information, Mr. Barry, a piccolo is, all caps, not a fish."
Yeah. Yeah, I had the best readers, and I loved the readers who loved. I got so much material from what I called alert readers. They would send me stuff, and I would write stories about it. But in a way, the readers I loved the most were the humor impaired, the ones who hated me. And I got so much wonderful material from that. I begin that chapter, I think, with a postcard that I got, which is one of my favorite pieces of mail that I ever got, and there's a picture of it in the book. And it was in response to a column I wrote about Christmas carols that I didn't care for. And the postcard says, "I haven't read one of your columns since you shit on the little drummer boy." And never will, because I'm not a fan of that particular Christmas carol. It goes on as long as dental school. It's the premise just annoys me. Like if you just had a baby, and the last thing you want is some kid coming in with a drum. Also, drums don't go rumpa-pum-pum. Okay, they go rat-a-tat-tat. But anyway, but that kind of. The hate mail really was great because every time you get hate mail, if you're a humor columnist, you got another column. The ultimate example of that for me, the column that I think got the most of all the angry mail, was when I wrote about, and this was not the point of this column at all. This was one kind of throwaway line in the column where I suggested that Neil Diamond, and before we go any further, I love Neil Diamond. He's a god. Okay, he's a genius, but he could have done better with the lyric, I said to no one there, and no one heard it all, not even the chair. Like, no kidding, Neil, because it's a piece of furniture, and probably the table didn't pick up on it either, So I wrote that, and it really was just like a throwaway thing. And you wouldn't believe the mail I got, and it was like really passionate mail, like, Mr. Barry, how dare you? This man is a genius. He has helped me in so many ways. I listened to Heartlight 14 times, and it cured my goiter, Mr. Barry. So like that kind of mail, So I ended up. I ended up writing another column about the Neil Diamond people. And then all these other people who agree with me are on my team on this issue, and people care about this issue, wrote, and I ended up writing a whole book about that. So the readers were fantastic to me, even the ones who didn't like me.
You say at one point that life as a humor columnist sounds like fun. And then you say we spend most of our time trying to crank out yet another humor column, which is not as much wacky fun as it sounds. The rest of the time we're engaged in regular, boring human activities, such as being with our families or buying tires.
Yes.
Now, you also say at some point in the book that you're essentially a shy, reclusive person, which is not unheard of for someone who's funny.
Yeah.
But that must make some slice of your public life, as much as you love your readers, a little hellish in terms of you're not a performing clown.
Well, what happens is people, two things. One is people always think you're working. Like, I'll be in the supermarket in Miami and I'll, looking at the cereal, and then somebody will come up and look at me, and I know the look, and it's like, and they'll go, "Are you going to write a column about this?" It's like, no, I'm just trying to decide, which kind of granola to get, but the other thing is, like, if you're supposed to be funny, sometimes just people think whatever you say is funny, even if it's not, so, how you doing? I go, fine. He's fine. You're like, fine. No, that happens. So, but mostly, I think it's just like, I had to learn that I didn't have to be like, and it's like if you were a magician, you just don't have to go around and pull a quarter out of everybody's ear. You can have a normal life most of the time, right? Right? No, yeah.
Am I allowed?
Yeah.
I know that you woke up at 3:30 in the morning in Rhode Island, so I hate to make you read, but
Oh, okay.
you can take your time. I'm gonna ask you one thing about a very funny anecdote in the book that I'll have you read part of.
Okay.
And then I'm gonna ask you a couple of more serious questions, and then obviously we're gonna open it up because there are 700 people here, and you probably have questions for Barry too. Like, is he gonna write a column about this? And so this is, you go on, I put like an arrow here where you can start.
Okay.
And then through to the end of this anecdote. You've gone to David Letterman's show to tape an episode. Rollerblade Barbie. There's been some concern in the community that when you roll her skates over things, they spark and cause fires.
Right. I wrote a column about this. I got a letter saying that, this woman one of her kids had set fire to her son's underpants with a Barbie doll. And it turns out this Barbie doll is called Rollerblade Barbie, and it has sparking wheels, like from a flint layer. And they'd been spraying hairspray, which is flammable, so they set the kid's underpants on fire. And but in journalism, we have to check these things out. So I got a Rollerblade Barbie, and this is where I asked my readers, does anybody have a Rollerblade Barbie? And they got me one. I probably stole it from their daughter, but and I went out and tested it one night in my driveway with it. If you want to do this at home, you get best results with Rave Extra Hold hairspray. Sprayed on. So I'm out there with a pair of underpants, spraying it and starting up fire, and then my neighbors see the flames and come running over. And if you think it's easy to explain why you're squatting in your driveway over a pair of burning underpants holding a Barbie doll in your hand, you don't know much about journalism. So that got the attention of the David Letterman show, and they invited me up there to do that on air, and that's what I think I'm reading about here.
So here you are pre-taping. You're testing out before you.
So before
you
the show, they brought me up early to rehearse it. And David Letterman wasn't there, but all these really serious people, not funny people, not wacky people, serious people gathered around, including a guy from the New York Fire Department, because we're going to set fire to something in a stage. So many eyes were watching me closely as I spread a pair of men's cotton briefs on the table, then sprayed them with hairspray. Then I picked up a Rollerblade Barbie, put her on the briefs, and scooted her forward, sparks flying, and suddenly nothing happened. Ha ha, I said, to add levity to the moment. But it was not a light moment. It was a moment only hours before the taping of a hit national show that was supposed to feature flaming underpants. And here we had a set of what is known in the TV business as stone cold briefs. So I sprayed more hairspray and tried again. Nothing. I tried a different kind of hairspray. Nothing. I tried a different set of briefs. Nothing. I tried a Rollerblade Ken, which we had. We did. We had that on. I don't know where they found it. Nothing. Pretty soon, all the observers had changed from being concerned about too much fire mode to being concerned that there would not be any fire mode. As I furiously swiped Barbie and Ken across various sets of underwear, people crowded around, offering helpful suggestions. Maybe you should preheat the underwear. At one point, the fire department representative, on hand to ensure the public's safety, said to me, I swear, you should use Ken. You're getting more sparks with Ken. Yeah, so, yeah.
Thank you.
That really
I
happened.
appreciate that. I think that's just a good reminder that when, even in a straight, this is a memoir, you do go through your life, but when you've had a life like yours, those are the anecdotes you get,
Yep.
which is really amazing. But switching gears entirely, most of the book is, while it does hew to your life and the details of it, it has all of your trademark absurdist humor. The first chapter about your mom and dad is quite different, and even though it does have a warm and occasional humorous tone to it, it's quite serious and loving. And I wondered how much that was almost maybe an impetus for the book, because it's so, there's not really another place for that, right? I mean,
yeah, I debated, and I still debate. Is it good to start a book by a supposedly funny guy with a fairly serious chapter? But I decided to, because the basic idea of the book was, like, there's an introduction I talk about, like, Pete, the question you get asked the most when you do what I do, really when you write, is where do you get your ideas? And so, like, the idea behind this book is where do the jokes really come from? Where do they come from? And it comes from my parents. And I had two wonderful parents. My dad was a Presbyterian minister, but he didn't have a church. He ran a social work agency in New York City. Very funny guy, dad humor guy. Smart, funny, just lovely man. My mom, it was where I really got my sense of humor. She was a housewife in the 40s and 50s, born in 1947. She had 4 kids growing up in the 50s, and she was a busy housewife dealing with all that. But she had an edge to her, a darkness to her. Ultimately, it was a tragic darkness, but she was edgy, not like the other moms. Like, we lived in the woods, and there was a pond behind our house in the back, and we used to go play by that pond, which you would never let kids do today, right? But it was the 50s; they had excess kids. Like, we got 4. We could lose a couple. So, my sister Kate and I, my older sister Kate and I would go. We'd go out. I'll never forget this. This sound. We would be going out to the pond, and we go, "Mom, we're going to the pond." And a normal mom of that time would have said, "Well, you kids, be careful now. Be careful. And Katie, take good care of your brother." My mom would go in this June Cleaver voice, "Well, don't drown, kids," And we go, "We won't," We thought that was hilarious. The tradespeople in Armonk loved my mother. She was just different from the other moms. And we would go down when she'd take us down on errands, go around. We'd be in like Bracetti's Market in downtown Armonk, which is 1 block. And there'd be mom shopping in the market, and Ray Bracetti would be behind the counter slicing bologna or whatever, and he'd go, "How you doing, Marion?" Because they all called her Marion, and she'd go, "Just shitty, Ray." And that was, like different. And one more. This is like the kind of ultimate my mom being funny when you didn't think it was coming story. When my dad died. Was obviously very sad. We had there was a big memorial service in New York City and another one in Armonk. A whole lot of people came. He was a very much loved man. And then just the family, my mom, me, my 2 brothers, my sister, took my dad's ashes to the cemetery, little rural cemetery near Armonk, and they dug a hole for the ashes. And it was a rainy, gloomy day. We walk up to the hole, and we put my dad in. We're covering it. We're all saying some things, and we're all weeping and saying some more things and hugging and weeping. And it's finally time to leave, and we turn, walking away from the grave. My mom is on my arm, and we're still crying. And she looks down and she sees the gravestone, and she goes, "Well, so that's why we don't see him around anymore." Even then, my mom had that, and my dad would have loved that joke. So
it's a great joke. Yeah, I mean, I guess that's true. The laughs in that chapter mostly come from your mom, who was hysterical.
Yeah.
But it's a remarkable chapter, and I think it's a great way to start the book, and very different from anything I've read of yours before. I have one last question, then we'll open it up to everybody. I found myself, first of all, I need some health tips or something. You're 77, which is insane.
No, but think how I feel.
Yeah. But you lived through, this is kind of the story of America from post-World War II to the current day in all kinds of ways. And one of them was, and maybe you've written about this before, but I missed it somehow. You were at the March on Washington in 1963 when MLK gave the "I Have a Dream" speech. I was, yeah. My dad was very active in the civil rights movement, and his organization ran some camps for inner city kids. So my
my brothers and sisters, I attend these. We're the only white kids at these camps there, and so we were like involved in the way people got involved in the '60s. And this one camp that at the end of the summer, we all went to New York and spent a night, and then we took buses and went down to the March on Washington. So I heard the "I Have a Dream" speech live, and it was like such a different moment, because we thought, this is, it's kind of the last time I think I felt this way. Like, we all know what's right, and we're all doing the right thing, and we're going to win, and it's great, and we shall overcome. And it was a wonderful time.
You kind of say something in the book about how you don't. I mean, it's kind of weird being at a moment like that, right? Because at the time you probably thought, wow, this is a great speech, but you didn't know this is I Have a Dream speech.
We knew he was the star, and we were excited when he got up and spoke.
Right.
But I didn't think this is the most famous speech I'll ever hear.
Yeah, that anyone will ever hear. All right. There's a lot of people. Raise your hands. I think we try to get mics around, maybe, but
do we do it with microphones?
Or we can shout, sir, right here.
We can. We'll do this old school.
Okay, I have a request and a question. My request is...
We do need to get mics. Okay, because we're recording. Yep. Got it.
Who do you think you are?
Yeah.
With your Michigan shirt.
You proudly served, okay.
Yeah.
Go Blue! Okay, so I have a request and a question. My request is, please, don't stop writing your end-of-the-year column.
Thank you.
And my question is, are you going to continue?
Yeah, no, I will. I will write the year in review this year. I write it every year, and people always ask me, am I going to do it? So I do. But boy, is it a pain in the ass. But partly because people always say, well, you have a lot of material to work with this year. They always say that. And I think, yeah, well, it's okay, so tell me the jokes. I'll wait while you tell me the jokes. But that's, and no, I will be doing it, though. But thank you for being concerned. Yes, right there.
Can we get the mic to the lady in the glasses? Through the middle? Yep, can we?
What was the name of the
We got 30 seconds.
A minute and 30 seconds. I have to put on my mic
We
voice.
have a system here.
I have to put on my mic voice.
Yeah.
What was the name of your friend that started the paper that went to Yale? Are you still friends with him?
His name is Tom Parker, and I still give him shit about that. Yeah.
And thank you for the backup dog.
Emergency main
helped
dog
me.
and auxiliary backup dog. Everybody should have one.
Yeah, it's
At the moment, I
its
have no
purpose.
dog, so that's pretty tragic.
Yeah, but I learned from that, so thank you.
Yeah.
We have time for at least one more in the back.
Right here? You have your hand up?
Yes. I want to know, inquiring minds want to know, who won the Pulitzer first, you or Weingarten?
Oh, me. Also, and I will see Gene this evening, and I will remind him I won it for being funny.
a lot harder.
Gene would like to be funny, but no. Gene is one of my best friends, but he didn't win it for humor. No, he is the greatest living feature writer, and he won 2 Pulitzers for that. So I should not.
Is there a gentleman in the glasses in the back?
Dave, it's almost 2 o'clock, which means if we were at the Daily Local News,
This man used to work for me at the Daily Local News.
did.
I hired him, and he still has never turned in the story on school bus safety.
That's exactly right.
And I'm waiting, Blake.
It's hard work, and
Yeah.
I've been working on it a long time.
Right.
But if we were at the Daily Local News right now, it would be time to throw the switch. And do you remember the routine you used to do about throwing the switch?
I have no earthly idea.
All right, there was a switch.
By 2 o'clock, I was usually at Joe's Sportsman's Lounge.
Not yet. You were shouting out to the newsroom, and you would say, "Who will throw the switch?" We had to throw a switch to get from the journalism wire, the UPI wire, to the state wire.
Oh, God.
Or we didn't have any state news, and you would shout, "Who will throw the switch?" And then you would throw a switch to the person, and they'd have to go and throw it. So that's a little example of what it was like to work for Dave.
Okay.
He would make sure it got done.
Okay, folks, that was an obscure anecdote from Blake Wilson. Thank you, Blake. Throwing of the switch. I don't think it ever happened. I think he made that up just now.
Got another back here on the right.
What's an appropriate response when you get called a smartass?
I don't know, but I will tell you this one thing. Okay, the book is called Class Clown. I was elected class clown, Pleasantville High School class of 1965, and it was no matter what you've heard, a legitimate, fair election. But I was a Wiseass. I was. Growing up, I was a Wiseass. And I was told by more than one teacher after having said something to, get the class to laugh, that's very funny, David, but you can't joke your way through life. Which turns out to be inaccurate.
You're asking for a friend, right, sir?
Yeah.
Do your children take after you at all?
Not really. I mean, I like them a lot, which is no. My daughter, not at all. She's in New York City in the fashion biz. My son, Rob, is a reporter. Well, he runs a reporting team at the Wall Street Journal. So but in a way, it's like the opposite of what I did. Because he deals with information and accuracy. But do I have time to tell a story about my son? Okay. When I won the Pulitzer Prize in 1988, he was 7 years old, and we were going to, the day that they announced the Pulitzer winners, we were going to go to Key West and rent. He loved to go to Key West because I always rented a motorbike, and he would ride on the back, and we would just spend hours riding around the island. That was one of his favorite things to do, and one of my favorite things. It was a great dad-son thing to do. So we were all excited about going to Key West. And I did not know that I was going to win a Pulitzer Prize. And this is not false modesty. I never expected it. The category is distinguished commentary, which, see, look at this. Right? You're laughing. Why wasn't the Pulitzer board laughing? So I didn't, but they, so it was a surprise. They're going to bring me in and surprise me. So Gene Weingarten calls me at home and says, you have to come in, you have to be here at noon for a meeting. I said, no, I'm going to Key West. I said, no, Janet Chesmer, the editor, says you have to be here for this meeting. So I said to Rob, okay, we're not going to Key West right away. We'll go to the Herald, then we'll go to Key West. So we go in, and everybody's gathered in the newsroom for the announcements. And it turns out that there were 2 Pulitzers for the Herald that day, one for a photographer named Michael Ducille and one for me. I did not know this. I'm saying to Rob, listen, this is very cool. Somebody's going to win a Pulitzer. I didn't know it was me. An editor who didn't know it was supposed to be a surprise comes up just before the announcement, shakes my hand and says, congratulations. And then I realized 2 things. 1, I'm about to win a Pulitzer. And 2, we can't go to Key West that day. So I look down at Rob and say, Rob, I'm sorry, we're not going to Key West today. And his face fell. And I go, but I'll buy you a Nintendo. He goes, he'd been bugging me for this Nintendo game. And he goes, really? And I go, yeah. So he jumps up and puts his arms around my shoulder and hugs me, and they announce the Pulitzer and take a picture of me. The next day, the Herald's front page is, Herald wins 2 Pulitzers. And there's a picture of Michael Ducille with being congratulated by his photography colleagues. And there's a picture of me with my son with his arms around his neck and this huge smile on his face. And everybody said to me, like, it was so great how Rob was so excited that you won the Pulitzer Prize. He had no idea. But anyway, now he's a dad. He's in his 40s. He's got 2 kids. He's at the Wall Street Journal, and his team has won, I think, 2 Pulitzer Prizes. So, and
as many of you probably know, that amazing picture is in the book.
Oh, it is. Yeah.
Of Dave with his son.
Yeah.
2 questions. Haverford was a very difficult school to get in back then. It was a very competitive school. So I think,
more so than Swarthmore. Oh, where are they going? Yeah.
well, it was
Like
it was about the same. And my question is the dark, dirty secret of Dave Barry that he was actually a really good student in high school and got good grades and good SATs?
I got good grades, yeah, but I wouldn't call me a good student. I was an English major at Haverford, but what I really did at Haverford was play in a rock band. And so I read approximately 1/3 of a lot of really great books, but I was unable to finish them because I had to practice the rock band stuff.
So the other question is, you mentioned Dave, Gene Weingarten's a big favorite of us all here. Could you give the origin story of you and Gene and Tom the Butcher?
Well,
how did you guys all get together? How did you
well, Gene hired me to get the Herald, and then shortly thereafter hired Tom as an editor. And I don't think Tom became the Butcher until he started editing Gene's column, which I would not wish on anybody, because if you know Gene, you know that Gene believes that everything he thinks is the perfect way to think about whatever it is, and nobody else has got a right to an opinion of any kind. So he's an asshole is what I'm trying to say. But in a good way, in a good way. Yeah.
Anybody else? The mics are roaming. A couple more minutes.
Come on, folks. We have the greatest humorist in the United States of America. You got to have some questions.
Well, now,
for him.
Perhaps
One
in the
of
history
greatest,
of the United
okay?
States of America.
I have to get through here.
Yeah, we just need the mic.
Just one microphone in here at Gaithersburg, huh?
What's
Yeah.
your favorite Beatles song?
Oh, man. I'll give you the honest answer. It's I Feel Fine.
That was an acceptable answer.
All right.
I want to thank you for hating the little drummer boy, which is
Thank you.
insufferable.
Somebody has to hate
I'll
it.
get some hate mail too now.
Yeah.
We have a gentleman with the mic. Yeah.
So in some ways, we're kind of kindred spirits, but people ask me my age. I say, do you want the chronological age or do you want the emotional age? So I'm 74, but I tell people I feel like I'm 18 when I'm doing it. But I had to raise it from 12 when I felt
Well, I tell people I'm 77, but I tell people that's the new 74. So.
But there you go.
So we're just a couple of young studs, aren't we? Because of our mental state.
Absolutely. I had to raise it from 12 because I fell off a post.
We are not young. I just want to point out, you can claim to be young, but when you're 77, like, okay, I'm a grandfather now, and I'll tell you when I feel. I have 2 grandchildren, and they're great. I love them, and I love to play with them. But when they want to play with you, they want to play with you on the floor. And when you're 77 years old, the floor is like North Korea, okay? You don't go there on the spur of the moment, and you don't know how you're going to get back from there, you know?
So the question is, do you have to nourish your inner child, or is it just there?
I really, I don't know. I mean, this is just who I am, right? You are who you are, I'm who I am. That's a terrible answer. I apologize for that answer.
Yeah, it's a tautological Neil Diamond kind of answer.
Yeah.
I am myself.
I am myself.
Way over here.
Some time ago, I read a piece by or a pamphlet or something by like a libertarian right-wing group that wanted to claim on some basis or other that your political views were basically sympathetic with their libertarian views. Is that a correct interpretation?
Yeah, I'm pretty much a libertarian. I mean, I'm like, my general feeling is I'd rather not have a law telling me what to do most of the time. I'm fine with them having laws for.
Laws for almost anybody else, really.
Me personally would rather not have laws. Yes.
What's your favorite bad song?
What is this? What is happening here?
It's a jukebox.
Okay.
What is your favorite bad song?
Okay, I'll just do the lyrics, see if you can guess the name of the song. She wrecked the car and she was sad, and so afraid that I'd be mad. But what the heck? Though I pretended hard to be, guess you could say she saw through me and hugged my neck. And honey, I miss you. That song sucks. Also, not a fan of that song.
Well, is there a bad song you like despite itself? Like that you actually enjoy, but
Land
you know
of a Thousand Dances.
Land of a Thousand.
Nah, because it's like the lyrics are easy to remember.
You want to borrow my mic?
Yeah.
Well, Dave, I would like to thank you for helping to end one of my worst long pregnancies. I was pregnant with my older son.
Wait.
And I read your book, Babies and Other Hazards of Sex.
And it
I was 2 weeks overdue.
And that got this.
And it got things rolling.
Yeah. You know, a lot of, like, can Joyce Carol Oates make a claim like that? You know? Marcel Proust? I don't think so.
That's the first time I've ever preferred a comment to a question. That was a great comment. Fantastic. We have an arm up. Is there a microphone within the general vicinity?
I think it might be over here, on your right.
It might be on my right.
Hi, how you
Oh,
doing?
there you go. Okay, and then could you, when you're done, would you mind running back and handing it to that lady who's
just-
standing? And she'll be our last question.
She's got a good pair of hands. Just
Okay, go for it.
Yeah.
I actually finished my first book that I ever read of yours in detention, Mr. Barry. But I'm a well-behaved member of society now, I promise.
Yeah, we can tell just by looking at you.
I know, right? But I just want a really quick one. Do you still remember how to say "holy cow" in French?
How to say
How
what?
to say "holy cow" in French?
Sacré mou.
Yes, oui, oui.
Sacré mou.
I'm fluent.
We have the microphone moving around. We have time for one
there
more,
she
and this
is.
one's
We
been
just
very
need to
patient.
get the microphone to her. Here it
So
goes. It's going across the back.
it's close. We're following it on GPS.
Yeah.
It's making its way.
There's a lot of pressure on this question. I hope it's not a state capital.
Bring us home.
From my friend Nina.
Hi, Nina.
Okay. I love Carl Hiaasen's books and yours. And you said you were friends. I'm just wondering if you're going to collaborate on anything.
No. I would love to collaborate with Carl, but he wouldn't probably want to collaborate with me.
Bet he would.
Carl's one of my best friends, and he just got a book. I'm going to promote Carl's new book out, Fever Beach, which I haven't read, but I hear is incredibly great. And it's out this same week as my book, so buy my book instead. No.
But
Buy
it
them
would give
both.
you an excuse to hang out in Key West, which is one of my favorite places.
I thought I was going to have to remind her you're not Carl.
I know, yeah.
But it worked out. No, it's good. It's good.
I have to
got
remind
it.
myself that, anyway.
I know that all of you could have done this by yourselves and you didn't need me, so thank you for suffering
John
through me.
did a great job, admitted. Thank you, John.
Join me in thanking Dave Barry for being here and for his life's work. Thanks, Dave.